When the doubt gets loud, but answer that call. Vision ain't real till you grind at speed, so breathing deep. Then call the damn leads. Call the damn leads.
Hey, welcome back to Call the Damn Leads, the show by sales professionals for sales professionals. I'm your host, Drewbie Wilson. With more than 2 decades in sales, I've seen it, been through it, heard about it. Now I'm bringing it to you, my favorite people in the world, the sales community. Because let's be honest, this is the greatest show on earth. It doesn't matter where you come from, what background, what personality type. You can create an amazing life for yourself in sales. Today's guest, no stranger to the journey. I'd like to welcome Mr. Stewart Ervin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being here, man. I want to jump right in. I want to hear your crazy sales story.
Yeah, so my crazy sales story really starts of kind of the first time I got the opportunity to really launch my company, Bracket Management. It was about 10 years ago. I was working as a W-2 employee, and at that time, my job was to go into companies and help get them turned around. So they wouldn't support us on on-time delivery or any of that stuff, and really was just a lot of times putting our program majorly past due. So it was in that time frame that the owner came to me and said, man, I really like the way you do things. I really like the way you run the business. And unfortunately, I'm in a position where I actually want to sell my business, and my business is in bad shape. So can you tell me how you would kind of help me out? So I go through the normal spiel and kind of say, hey, if it were me, this is what I would do, so on and so forth. And he's like, I love it. He goes, I want to hire you. He made me an offer. Everything was great. And then once I accepted it, he said, well, here's the thing. I need you to go sell the current company that you work for on the idea that you need to come work for me. He says, they're my largest customer and I don't want to piss them off. And so you need to go to your boss and say, hey, man, this is what I've got, opportunity I've got given to me. Can you make it happen? And that's what I had to do. So I had to actually go to our director and say, hey, I've been given this opportunity, basically sell them on the idea. Why it would be a better idea for me to be working for the supplier versus the company, and how to get their blessings to make it happen. Obviously, they blessed it, and 10 years later, I'm still doing the turnaround game. So that was crazy because I had to kind of sell on both sides, right? Internal to where I was currently working and external to where I was trying to go.
I love that story, man. I had actually something kind of similar when I was younger. I worked at a tobacco shop, and I was kind of like the young guy. I'd been there maybe 6 months or so, and I was talking to the owner, and I'm like, hey, man, I want to start making a couple extra bucks. Like, what do you got for me? And he's like, well, here's the deal. I think you'd make a great manager. If you'll go back and tell the current manager who's been running the shop for 25 years that you're taking over, you can have his job. And I was just like,
yeah.
What? But I did, and I got his job, and I got my raise. And, I played it in the sense of, listen, man, this is better for both of us because you're getting annoyed. You're tired of doing this. Let me come in, take over. It's going to help me put some extra ducats in my bucket. But I also want to work together on this because clearly you know the game and I don't. So you're going to have to teach me the job that I just fired you from. But here's how we're going to make this work in everybody's best interest. And from what I understand of what you're doing, that's kind of where when you're stepping in and working with a company to turn them around, there's a few things that you have to look at with kind of a non-biased lens and say, all right, well, here's the priority. Here's what we need to focus on. So what are kind of those, top 2 or 3 things that if someone does have a business that's maybe struggling a little bit, that you can maybe have them focus on first and kind of look at and go, hey, here's where I need to put my time, energy, and attention.
Yeah. So when we come into a business, the very first thing we do is we kind of do a quick overview of kind of where the 3 years financials have, where they're at. Does anything stand out? So if they're in major trouble, traditionally somewhere in the P&L, you'll see it, right? So we're going to look at cost. That's kind of the first thing is are you making money or not? And if you're not making money, why? Or is it because you don't have the sales? Is it because you have the sales, but you can't operationally have the operational throughput? What does all that stuff look like? And 9 times out of 10, just by looking at the P&Ls over a 3-year trajectory, we can figure out quickly where's the area. So it really normally comes in that area. You deal a lot with sales is high. The ops team can't execute it. Sales drops. All of a sudden, the ops team catches up. Sales go back through the roof, drops back down, and it's a constant up and down. So you can always normally see that in trajectory. And so then you drive in and say, okay, what are we going to do to make sure there's an alignment between the sales team and the operations team? But we always do that. Hopefully we're blessed and say, oh, your company's in good shape. We just need to put some processes in place that let you scale. But most of the time, if someone's calling me, they've reached a limit, they've reached a ceiling, or they're just burned out because they're tired of dealing with that up and down, up and down. But again, we always see that through the first initial financial review.
Yeah, there's a quote out there by a rapper, Yo Gotti, and I think Lil Wayne was on the track, but men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie.
100%.
And that's always one of the things when I'm working with any sales professional, any sales team, I'm always like, let's look at the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find interesting is that, even in our own businesses, like we get in and we start looking through the numbers, and sometimes we're looking at them over here, and then we got to go back into our own business and be like, shit, I want to go back and alter that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it's been a journey to figure out, like, from a sales perspective, if you're working with a company, what do you guys consider like the most important metrics? Like, obviously revenue in is a big one, but what other metrics come into play there that someone who's listening could say, hey, maybe I need to go back and do a better job of tracking that info?
Yeah, so sales, gross margin, net. Those are your top three, right? Also, probably close, coming up there as well as your cash balance. What's your cash flow looking at over time? Those are the four hot ones that we look at. That's the one we track. That's the top four we always look at the end of every month. Again, what's your sales? How's your margins coming? How are they trending? What's your overall net profit? Again, the margins is how well you execute on the material side and labor execution. The net's how well you're controlling your expenses from an overhead standpoint. So, that's what's critical. The kicker of all this is the cash balance. You have a lot of times where these companies, they catch fire and all of a sudden they're producing twice as much as they've ever produced. They run out of cash. And so that's why we really keep a very tight watch on the cash flow. We're always looking at cash forecasting. And really, again, that's where that alignment of the sales team and the operations team aligns with your finance team.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the fun, interesting parts about becoming an entrepreneur and starting a business is, like, you don't know any of this stuff when you start.
Right.
You're like, hey, I'm going to get out of this job and I'm going to go sell more of this thing that I'm really passionate about, or, the product or service that you offer. But there's no recipe book.
That's right.
For building the perfect business. And if there was one, like, we'd all read it, but there's millions and millions of different books on how to grow a business and how to do better sales and how to do better marketing and how to be a better leader. And so I love the idea that you can kind of learn a little bit from anyone that you're chatting with, which is also why I love doing this show transparently, because I get to benefit from learning from smart folks like yourself, Stewart. So, like, thank you again for being here. And it's what I'd be curious about is, like, in a company, right? There's so many layers to it, but I'm always interested in the difference people have in the opinion of what is branding versus marketing versus sales.
Interesting. Yeah. So the branding, how I always look at it, even for my own business, the branding really is the tone. How are you perceived? And right. So we've had a lot of one of the companies I'm working with, we have a mutual friend, and the branding he puts out is not actually who he is as a real person. And so I told him, I said, look, that's just his brand. That's his online persona. The guy's really not that way. But in the world he plays in, that's his brand, right? And so the marketing side is basically all the artifacts and all the things he does to help promote that brand. And that's a lot of times in our discussion, that was what was so off-putting. They're like, I knew this guy 10 years ago, and that is nothing like who he was. I was like, yeah, those are the things he's doing to blow his brand up. And I said, yes, he is a completely different person, but that is that side of things. And then the sales aspect is once you've got the people on the hook because they bought into your brand, they've, taken on your marketing, then you get into the thing of trying to close them out. Right. And so that one of the dangers that I see when you have a different persona than you really are is you got to be consistent with all that stuff, And so I'm trying to be super consistent. I am who I am all the way through. And if you don't like it, then I probably don't want to deal with you anyhow. But again, sales is the final cherry on top to try to bring it all home.
Yeah, and I appreciate that bit you added at the end there about, you don't have to do business with everyone.
100%.
And not all business is good business.
That's right.
And I think that's something where a lot of sales professionals, especially the newer ones, but even the ones that have been around for a while, that get themselves into that tight cash spot where they're like, listen, I'll take whatever. Like, I just need to put money in the bank. It's a race to the bottom, unfortunately, and it
100%.
never ends well. And so, how do you for someone that might be going through that process right now, right? Because I know this is kind of your specialty, the turnaround. So like, how do you get them to increase their value and the company value when they're in that scarcity mindset aspect of the business?
Yeah, so it's such a very common thing where everyone thinks every dollar is a good dollar, right? And I have a client we all constantly joke about their horse for a dollar, and they're like the first time I told them that not every dollar is a good dollar, man, they about slapped me out of my chair. They just could not believe that not every dollar was a good dollar, and so I've been able to spend time with them. Obviously, I've got them to understand that, but I've got them to break down their different business segments and saying, look, that's a 35% segment, and that's a 50% segment, and that's 10%. Knowing that, where are you going to put your energy behind, right? You're going to go after the 50%. And so we're going to protect that. We actually may decide to shed that 10% off, even though that's big revenue dollars. That doesn't mean anything for the bottom line. That's why I go back to sales margin net. And so, we go and look at that and say, is it really worth, if you're $100,000 or $100 million a year business and you make no money, what good is it? So, you always heard the term revenue is for vanity, profits for sanity. And that's really what I try to drive home. And again, we all go back to the numbers. And so it took a while. I mean, it took months and months of explaining that not every dollar is a good dollar. And I did it all through breaking down their segments and letting them understand the margins. And that's what we normally try to do. So if you're going to increase the value, you really have to understand that piece of it. Where am I making money? Where am I not? And again, a lot of that's on the margin side, because your SG&A, which is everything below gross margin, is just your overhead. And so to increase value, if you really understand your costs, you might can find some areas that you can shed some pennies here and there. But if you understand your costing, you may also can increase your price. Every dollar of price that you go up goes to the bottom line. Every dollar of cost that you shed goes to the bottom line. And so those are two key areas when we talk about value creation, is doing that. But in order to have a solid pricing strategy, you really have to know your cost. And when you can know all that, you can really start to drive your costs down and just start to spread that margin gap even more.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's something where, again, we said it at the beginning, but like, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. And you have to have a process for tracking your numbers. And one of the things that I'm seeing, right now, kind of a buzzword is playbooks, right? And so it's everyone in a business. Remember, like, I'm a little bit, I'm not a young guy. I'm in my late 30s, almost 40. I played a lot of video games as a kid. And one of the things I knew about video games is if it ever got to a point where I couldn't figure it out, I could go to the game store and read the game guide and get the secret on how to beat that boss or how to get through that level. And that's what a business playbook essentially is. And so what do you guys think are the key components of the playbook from a business perspective? Because we know about video games, but like from a business perspective, how do we turn that into the game that we're reading the playbook for?
Yeah, it really varies. So at Bracket, we really kind of have 6 playbooks. And the first playbook we really focus on is communication. That's both internal and external, right? So we want to know, why do you exist? What does it look like to win? What's your mission, vision, and values? Like, we want to actually for you to incorporate that into your business, right? Not just, everyone talks about them, but when you really can incorporate that and you really know why you exist, does your external customer know, and does your internal customer know? So everything is built around how are you communicating who you are, both internally and externally. So that's like playbook 1. Playbook 2, we really look at focusing on looking forward. And so we develop an annual plan looking forward. So many businesses just look at their results. And a lot of times, the results may not be finished until the 15th of the month. And so a lot of times it's 90 days. It could be up to 45 days before they really recognize something that had gone on back at the first part of the previous month. And so we had to develop an annual plan to try to get the entrepreneurs to start looking forward in their business and have a goal set, again, where they're driving their business forward. Once you kind of know who you are and you start setting an annual plan, the third playbook is setting a sales funnel, a 2x to 3x sales funnel. Because again, if your goal is $1 million, you need a $2 to $3 million pipeline going at any time, because you're just going to have stuff fall out, right? But again, you've got to always have something churning. So once you have all that stuff in place, our fourth playbook centers around a monthly review. So you set an annual plan, but as you go throughout the year, things change. Forecasts change. Revenues are up. Expenses are up, whatever the case may be. So you got to, on a monthly basis, you got to sit down and say, okay, where are we at as a year to date? where are we at in regards to what does the next 30, 45, 60 days look like? And in that same time frame is when we align our sales and ops team. What do you see coming down the horizon? How busy are we in the shop? And really make sure that we align that. So we try to get out of that up and down, right? So we try to level load that stuff. And so that's really where that monthly review comes in Playbook 4. Playbook 5 centers mostly around employees. Do they have job descriptions? Do they know what their pay ranges are? Do they have KPIs? Do they know are they bonus eligible? If they are, do they know what it looks like and how do they win their bonuses? And that's why everything's so focused around Playbook 5. Once you get Playbooks 1 through 5 going, you have a really solid business. And then you can go into Playbook 6, which is all about value creation, around what we talked about earlier, which is pricing strategies, cost reductions. The third thing we haven't touched on is new business growth, right? So you need to constantly be bringing in new business so you can continue to have product to take price to. Your economies of scales will go up to drive your costs down. And you're always bringing in, properly diversifying your business. And when you focus on that side of it, your business never really goes stale. The beautiful thing about it is small incremental changes in each one. A little 3% price here, 3% cost reduction there, 4% new business. And you'll start looking, seeing you'll get an 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% year over year increase in your total net income. And again, it's the small incremental changes.
Yeah, that's the stuff that most people don't think about, right? They're always looking to go back to the baseball analogy of like the grand slam. They want to step up and they just want to smash it. They don't realize that base hits win ball games. And
100%.
that's those little changes that you're talking about, and not just making a one small change, but being consistent with it.
100%.
Because that is another thing I know sales professionals will do is they'll do something that works and they'll do it a couple of times and then they'll go right back to their old bad habits and doing things the way that they used to do it, which is where I loved what you said about the forward forecasting of, hey, where should I be if I'm actually doing the things that are going to get me the results that I'm tracking and paying attention to? And it happens so often where you're just looking backwards at all of what's happened and not thinking about how are we preparing for what's to come. And so I was taking notes over here selfishly, like, oh, I love that. I love that. Like, I'm building a business. And so, hey, where can I improve this little small percentage here? How can I make my playbooks a little bit better? How can I make sure my team is fully confident that when they open up that playbook, they know what they're expecting and what's expected of them? And I think that's where the aspect of leadership within a business starts to become that major shift from sales professional, solopreneur, maybe small business entrepreneur to like actual growing company. And so where do you guys start to see the impact really converting into the leadership mindset versus still kind of running at the small business mindset?
Yeah, it's unique in that it varies per person, right? So I've got some entrepreneurs I've worked with, they've hit their ceiling at $1.5 million. I've worked with other guys who hit their ceiling at 80 million and everywhere in between. So it really is centered around the individual business owner. At the end of the day, most of the time, the guys who start the business, they're the subject matter experts in regards to the technical side of what they do. So it really boils down to what kind of natural, as you kind of alluded to earlier, you can read all the books, but what have you been exposed to in your previous life? Some of these guys I work with, they're second generation owners and they don't know anything. So they've only worked inside of their family business and they're taking the reins of a $40 million deal. And they're like, I have no clue. I have no clue what I'm doing, and I get a lot of that. I got 2 clients now that are they're second generation owners. They've never worked anywhere except their family business and they're absolutely lost. And so at some point they hit a ceiling and they go, man, I'm way outside of my comfort zone. Many times they'll hit that ceiling and they ignore it. And all of a sudden they go backwards and then they're like, oh crap, I've lost control. What am I going to do? Right. So those are 2 times I get the calls the most is I've hit a ceiling. I don't know what to do. I'm way outside of my comfort zone, or man, my profits are just either stalled or going backwards. And I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. I don't want to ruin what's been given to me, So it really varies by each individual person. But at the end of the day, you do have a ceiling, right? As long as it's just you kind of driving the ship and you're doing the best you can do. And you got a ship full of pirates and you're trying to build a Navy. That's when all these playbooks come into place and you got to figure all that stuff out. Tradition is around that 10 million mark. Most time these guys can get to about 10 million and operate with their normal kind of just get it done attitude. But a lot of times I see people in that 10 to 15 million mark is when the business kind of gets a little bit out of control and they got to say, all right, I need to come and start putting some processes and procedures in place, kind of shed off some of those employees that got me here. And that's really hard for a lot of people to say, crap, I realize that you've been with me riding it for 10 years, but unfortunately, I got to take it to here. And we've worked with you. We've done everything we can, but you just don't have what it takes to help us get there. And so a lot of times we're trying to find them a spot inside the company, but sometimes they just have to go. And again, all those are very hard pills to swallow. That's why we go back to the first playbook. You always got to keep pointing back to the why. Why? Why do you exist? Why are you doing it? And just keep reminding the business owner of that.
Man, that's so true. And I've met so many entrepreneurs and small business owners that get to that point where the hard conversations have to be had.
100%.
And the cliche phrase, and I don't know who quoted it, so I apologize. We'll have to find it and add it in there later. But like, what got you here won't get you there.
100%.
And when you're operating from a growth mindset, there is 100% a limit on what everyone is capable of. And while we like to believe that anyone can, learn and grow, they still have to implement and actually be willing to do those things. And not everyone is. That's one of the reasons Call the Damn Leads exists, because you'd be surprised how many people know that sales is how they make their money, but they're still like, I don't want to pick up the phone. I don't want to make the calls. And so what I'd be interested in, and I know we're getting close to time, so I don't want to take up too much of yours, but like, what's one thing a small business owner can go and do right now today to start getting their team more in alignment so that they can start righting the ship?
Yeah, that's a good one. So the one thing we do, the very first thing you kind of have to do internally is they got to do a check in regards to do they really want to grow. So we do our discovery calls. That's what we try to vet out. Is there a values alignment? Do you really want to do what it's going to take to do, right? Or do you want to keep this as a lifestyle business? And so if you really, really do say, hey, I think I have the call, I do want to grow this, you really have to kind of get your why in place. And I know it sounds all lovey-dovey, but I've worked with enough businesses now to see those individuals who have a why that is beyond their walls can tend to drive and get people behind them and really drive forward as things get difficult. The companies that really don't have a why beyond their walls, a lot of times you'll find that they'll either sell, they'll close, or just struggle along their way. But when there's a reason that's bigger than the company, you really can get people to rally behind you and drive your business forward, even when it gets difficult. So a lot of times I say, you've got to sit down and you got to know your why. If you don't have a why, you better figure out pretty quickly, because that's going to be a part of your driving force going forward as you rally the troops to really make the changes needed to drive this business forward and to grow it.
Man, I love that answer. And, I'm sure we could sit and nerd out on this conversation for several hours because I'm enjoying what you're bringing to the table, but I want to be respectful of your time. How do we come find you, follow you, check out more of your content? I'm sure there's someone hearing this right now that's like, I got to talk to this guy. So how do we come check out more of your stuff?
So I'm primarily on LinkedIn, Stewart Ervin. You can just check me out there. I'm active almost all the time. I have a newsletter posted up there. We drop a lot of information to help business owners, with just practical, no fluff stuff, just trying to make it happen. You can also check out my website at bracketmgmt.com.
Beautiful. I appreciate that. I'm going to make sure all those links are down there in the show notes. And again, man, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. This has been great.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me.
Listen, you guys know what to do next. If you enjoyed the show, go share it on social media, put it over on LinkedIn, tag me, tag Stewart, let the world know you invested some time and got some value out of this conversation. Maybe someone that sucks at running their business. They got no systems. They got no processes. Send them this episode. You don't have to tell them any of those things, but just if send them this episode. Tell them it made you think of them. And then do us the favor of sharing it, leaving us a review, listening to all the old episodes. Like, these are the kind of conversations we love to have and we're having on a consistent basis. However, if you have a story and you think it deserves to be on this show and you can help the world just like my man Stewart did today, head over to callthedamnleads.com/podcast. Send us your details. Let's get you booked in here. Then go grab some stuff, a hat, keychain, wristband, something from the store to let them know that you love Call the Damn Leads. And from here, you know what to do. Get on the phones, call the damn leads. We'll see you next time.
When the doubt gets loud, but answer that call. Vision ain't real till you grind at speed, so breathing deep. Then call the damn leads. Call the damn leads.